Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome into another exciting Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants broadcast with us. If you're new to us, as many of our audience is today, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. Now, it is such a great thrill in this job to get to showcase the coolest scientists and explorers on planet Earth. And I'm particularly excited today because today, February 1st, marks the beginning of our epic month solely showcasing the coolest women in science and exploration on planet Earth. Every single February since our inception back in 2014, we kick out all the dudes and do like 50 plus programs featuring the coolest women on planet Earth. So a big welcome to all of you as an audience joining us for this. Do sign up. We've got all sorts of things on our webpage. Everything we do is going to be going to our YouTube channel. And we've got a particularly exciting series on the 12th through 16th with our amazing friends at If Then. So do check those out. We hope to have you here very, very soon. I want to say a big welcome to our audience as well. As always, when we've got speakers in and around Texas area, we've got a lot of Texans joining today. Mr. Lucas, Klaus, Ross, and Saunders. Big welcome to you guys. If we've got classes joining coast to coast today, so a big hello to absolutely everyone as we dive in with our speaker du jour. Now, a few months back, I had the chance to bring in Juli Berwald. She is an amazing author, marine biologist, and she joined us to talk about her second book, Life on the Rocks, all about coral reefs, one of the coolest, most important topics in ocean science on the planet. Again, that's on our YouTube channel. Lots of cool stuff to explore there. But today, I'm so excited because we get to dive in with her first book on a topic we've never covered before in our history. Jelly. She wrote Spineless, which is an incredible book, one of my favorite I've read this year. You should check it out as well on her website and go get it from the local library as soon as you're done. But she's going to walk us through a little bit of her personal journey and the incredible science of jellyfish. They are wild organisms. You're in for a treat. I'm going to stop talking. Juli, thank you so much for joining us again, and welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Jesse. Hi, everybody. Thanks for inviting me back. It's fun to talk to you. So here we go. I guess here we go. So as Jesse said, I've written a couple books, and one of them's about jellyfish and one's about coral. And I'm going to talk to you about jellyfish today. And you might be wondering, like, how does someone start thinking about jellyfish? And that's a really good question. So I'm a writer, and I write about science, and that's awesome because I get to write about, these are some of the fun stories I've written, and you can see I've gotten to write about whale sharks and stuff, but I was working on this story when I stumbled on the jellyfish, and this is about something that's happening in our oceans called ocean acidification. And some of you guys might know that like we've been releasing a lot of carbon dioxide into our atmosphere from burning fossil fuels, and that's causing climate change. But it's also that carbon dioxide can mix with water and make our oceans a little more acidic. So acidic things aren't really great for, they can dissolve stuff, especially like shells and things with hard outsides. And a lot of stuff in the ocean has that kind of thing. So anyway, I was working on this story, and it was for National Geographic, and they asked me to look at this graphic, which says who's going to be a winner and who's going to be a loser in a more acidic ocean. And so on the loser's side, it's things with hard shells that can dissolve. So like crustaceans, this is supposed to be a cuttlefish. There's a typo that has a bone inside of it. Sea stars, clownfish. At the time, we thought maybe it messed actually with their sense of smell, and coral, which have hard skeletons. And on the winner's side, there were soft things like kelp and sponges and algae and jellyfish. And I don't know why, but like the jellyfish just jumped out at me, and they were like, I was like, how much do we know about jellyfish and ocean acidification? So I did what everyone does when they don't know the answer to something, and I Googled it, and I got like all these crazy responses where I was so surprised because it said, meet your new jellyfish overlords. You won't much like them. The jellyfish are taking over our seas, and it might be too late to stop them. Our swarms of jellyfish taking over the ocean. And I thought, what? I did not know this was happening. And so I said, let me go ask some scientists. And so I spent the next few years going around the country and talking to scientists and asking them about jellyfish. And they told me the most incredible stories. And I'm going to share some of those with you today. So first of all, jellyfish, even though a lot of people don't think about them that much, they hold a lot of world records. So This animal here is called a siphonophore. And it's a little complicated if you think it's one animal or many animals, because it's made up of these smaller pieces called zooids. And but it is all connected, and each one of these zooids does different things for the animals. And anyway, this animal can be longer than a blue whale. It is the longest animal in the world, and it's a jellyfish. Jellyfish are also the smallest animal in the world. This is a parasite, so it infects fish eggs. It's the size of 10 bacteria. It's the smallest animal in the world. It's also a jellyfish. Jellyfish are the oldest, have the oldest muscle that we've ever found. 560 million years ago, there was an animal that looked kind of like this. It was a jellyfish, and it's the oldest muscle we've ever found. And then I'm not sure if I'm on the screen, but I'm going to do a little demo. So watch this pen fall. Okay, that's the acceleration due to gravity. Boom. That's how fast gravity pulls things down. When a jellyfish stinging cell explodes, it explodes with the fastest motion in the animal kingdom, 5 million times faster than that pen just fell. 5 million times faster. It's the fastest motion we know, and that's a jellyfish stinging cell. So jellyfish hold all these crazy world records. And I was like, I need to know more. So I got myself a jellyfish tank, and we set it up in the dining room of our house. And my kids named the jellyfish Peanut, the big one, Butter. No, sorry, Peanut was the little one, Butter was the big one, and Jelly was the one in the middle. And so we lived with these jellyfish for a few days, and I was like, I would walk past them and I would kind of look at them, and I was like, are you guys looking at me? Can you hear me walking around the house? And so I started wondering, like, what makes up a jellyfish? And so I drew this picture to kind of make things a little clearer. And this is the structure of a jellyfish. It's its anatomy. So jellyfish just have one layer of cells on the outside, and then one other layer of cells that lines their stomach. So that's their stomach. And then this is their mouth. And then they have these things hanging down. Some people call them tentacles. They're actually not their tentacles. They're called oral arms, and they're like extendo lips. They're like their lips grew long and kind of hang off their body. And so they just have, and then the mouth is in the middle of those oral arms right there. And so they just have one hole. So their oral arms are lined with those stinging cells that we talked about already. That's the fastest motion in the world. And they can sting their zooplankton prey. They eat little zooplankton, so little animals that swim around in the water. And then they move them up into their mouth, and then they digest everything in their stomach. And then whatever they haven't digested comes right back out their mouth. So they poop with their mouth. So that's kind of cool. Anyway, the other thing jellyfish have, and so then the jellyfish, like, this is the jelly part, and it's in their bell. That umbrella part is called their bell, and it's full of this jelly. And jelly, it's really watery, and it's not actually like living cells. Like, we have a layer called our mesoderm that holds all our organs and things like that. That's inside of us. The jellies don't have that layer. They only have an outer layer like the skin and an inner layer lining their intestinal tract. But in between is jelly. And that jelly is really cool because they can actually use it to help them. They can pump gases in there so they have more oxygen to breathe. They can use it to float or sink. It's like almost like a way to control their buoyancy in the water. It's really good it's really cool. It also makes them look big so that predators don't want to eat them. They look a little more scary when they're big. But this is the thing that's really cool about jellyfish. So if you've ever been to an aquarium and you've kind of looked in between the little dips around the edge of a jellyfish's bell, there's a spot that looks even whiter than the rest of the jellyfish. And that is kind of like its face. It's called a rhopalium, or plural, because they have 8 of them or more around the outside of their bells. And in plural, it's called rhopalia. And so that is kind of where the jellyfish gets to understand its world. It's all of its sensory organs are there. And so this is called a box jellyfish, and this is its rhopalium right here. And here's a blow up of it. And here you can see that, in fact, this is one eye, this is another eye, and these are little eye spots. So this jellyfish, this box jellyfish on its rhopalia has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 eyes on each one of them. And it has 4 of them. This jellyfish has 4 around its body. So it's looking into the world with 24 eyes at all the time. And there's another thing on this rhopalia, on the jellyfish face, that's kind of like inside of our ears. When we move our head, we have little hair cells inside of our ears, and there's a little crystal, and it kind of rolls around, and it tells us, or actually they're attached to the ends of the hairs, and the crystal will move with gravity. And that's how we know which way is up and which way is down, because the crystal's weighing downwards, and our body takes that information and it says, oh, that's up, that's down. Well, in a jellyfish, they have a very similar thing. It's called a statocist, and it's a bunch of hair cells with a crystal, and it attaches to those cells, and it tells the jellyfish which way is up and which way is down. And so it has one of those in each one of its rhopalia. So it actually has kind of like an ear-like structure in there. And actually some scientists took some baby jellyfish up to space in the space shuttle, and they let them hatch or grow up in space. And it turned out, if they didn't have gravity, the jellyfish, if they grew up without gravity, they got dizzy when they came back to Earth, and those jellyfish just swam in circles when they came back to Earth because they hadn't developed the proper ability to understand which way is up and which way is down. I also learned that there's people out there making jellyfish robots, and this was an example of one of the jellyfish robots. And it turns out, this is like a crazy story. The jellyfish scientist was telling me that he put this robot in the water, and he turned it on, and it had like little muscles inside of here. And he turned it on, and he thought, okay, I'm going to watch this jellyfish robot swim. And he turned it on, and it went whoop, 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 whoop. It couldn't move forward. It just moved back and forth like a yo-yo when the bell contracted. And then they thought about jellyfish. And if you've seen a jellyfish swim, it has kind of like these wiggles on the edge of the bell that kind of wave. So then they glued some extra plastic on the end. It's actually silicone on the end of this bell. And they put it back in the water, and then they turned it on, and it went whoop, 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 whoop. So it swam properly. And it turns out that what they discovered from looking at jellyfish robots was that wiggle at the end of the jellyfish bell means everything. It's how animals move in the water. And if you think about it, like if you've ever swam with fins, you know how much faster you are when you have that wiggle on the end of your fins? That is what drives things forward in the water. And they discovered it from looking at jellyfish. And so this is a little hard to see, but this is the side of the jellyfish robot. And what they did was they measured pressure on top of the jellyfish and underneath it. And this blue stuff is low pressure. So low pressure occurs when you suck something up you create a low pressure. That's what, like when you suck a straw, the low pressure you create is what sucks the water up the straw. Well, that wiggle on the edge of the jellyfish's bell, what it does is it creates a low pressure on top of the jellyfish that pulls it through the water. And so jellyfish actually don't move by pushing against things the way we do on land. They move by creating something that sucks them through the water, which is so cool. And it turns out jellyfish are so good at it. This is a graph, and it shows on this axis, it shows how much energy it takes to move. And on this axis, it just shows the size of how big you are. And this line down here is the jellyfish. And it turns out the jellyfish use the least amount of energy to move of anything the scientist studies. So they're the most efficient swimmers in the sea, which is crazy. And jellyfish also have this amazing life cycle. So this is the jellyfish's life cycle. And this is the one you guys are probably like the most familiar with. So it's called a medusa. But jellyfish make little babies. They're called planula, and they're like larvae. They're larvae. And they are like a tic tac. They're kind of like a tic tac with fur on it. So they swim with the little cilia, they're called, but they're kind of like furry. And they settle down and they like to live upside down. They like to kind of live in the shadows. And they grow into something called a polyp. And a polyp is like a little teeny sea anemone. And then this is the most crazy part of a jellyfish's life cycle. And we don't exactly know why, but at some point, a jellyfish polyp will slice itself into like a stack of pancakes. And so you can see that over here in this picture. So these are all jellyfish polyps. And this one, they're all slicing themselves into this stack of pancakes. And it's called strobilation. And then what happens is this bottom pancake will start like wiggling and jiggling and wiggling, and it will pop off the bottom of the stack. And then it becomes kind of like this snowflake thing called an ephira. And then the next one will start wiggling and jiggling, and it will pop off the stack. And it becomes an ephira. And so what you can see is that a single polyp, actually, forgot to mention this, a single polyp can divide itself into a whole field of polyps. And then they all strobilate. And so that's why you tend to see jellyfish in these huge blooms, they're called, a big cluster of them, because just one single planula can become a polyp, which then becomes a field, which then strobilates into like a dozen or so ephira, which grow up into jellyfish. And so that's one reason why we think, and I'll get to this in a second, jellyfish numbers may be increasing in our oceans. And that's why those Google headlines I found a long time ago were like, jellyfish are taking over. So, but there's one more really cool thing I want to tell you about this slide before we move on, which is this guy down here. This is called the immortal jellyfish, and you might have heard of it before. And what this jellyfish does is there's the medusa. It doesn't go through these stages of becoming a planula. It doesn't make a larvae. If things are bad, it can just go from being an adult medusa straight to being a polyp. And then it goes through the rest of this and then straight to being a polyp. So it never makes a larvae. It never forms. It never goes through. It doesn't have to form a larvae and have eggs and sperm to reproduce or to keep living. And so that's why they call it the immortal jellyfish, because it can just go from medusa to polyp forever. And we don't even know how long it can do that. So this question of our jellyfish taking over our oceans, it's still up for debate. But it does seem like a lot of things we're doing to the oceans are making life kind of better for jellyfish. So here, this is kind of representing pollution. And you know how I said like the jellyfish can use their bell almost like a gas tank, a scuba tank, to fill it with oxygen if they want. So they can handle pollution better than some other animals can. And then when we overfish our oceans, we're scraping away what's naturally there, and we're creating more hard surfaces for those jellyfish polyps to live on. And also as we build a bunch of docks and oil rigs and all kinds of hard structures out into our ocean, those are also hard surfaces that the jellyfish polyp can live on. And the jellyfish polyp is kind of like the Medusa factory. So there does seem to be some evidence that we're creating an ocean that's more natural for or easier for jellyfish to live in. And so some people are saying that in the past, we used to have oceans full of lots of big fish and lots of diversity. Now we've moved into a kind of ocean where everything's a little bit smaller. We've overfished a lot of the biggest fish. And maybe in the future, we're going to end up with these animals, which are jellyfish eaters. So this is called a mola mola. It lives entirely on jellyfish. It's the biggest bony fish in the world. It's also called a sunfish. And then turtles eat jellyfish. And so maybe in the future, some scientists suggest that our oceans are going to look a lot different. And jellyfish will play a role in that. Some scientists I talked to did a study where they said, where are jellyfish numbers maybe increasing and where are they holding, steady or decreasing? And they came up with this map. And it's hard people haven't paid a lot of attention to jellyfish. One of the reasons they're hard to study is that when scientists go out and study the ocean, we go out on boats and we pull nets through the ocean and we pull those up and then we count whatever we find in those nets. We kind of dump it on the back of the boat and then sort through it and look at it. Well, if you do that to a jellyfish, it's not going to work so great. You're going to tear it up. They're so fragile. You're not going to see them. And so for most of the last century, we didn't really know how many jellyfish existed. We don't have a good understanding of what used to be here. So this is the best we've done so far. And so these red parts of the world are places where we know jellyfish numbers have increased. And these orange parts of the world are places where we're pretty sure that they've increased. Green spots are places where they've stayed about the same, and blue places, there's not very many, or where jellyfish seem to be decreasing. And so I decided I wanted to go to some of these places where jellyfish numbers are increasing to see what's going on there. And so I ended up going to Japan, which is over here. I went to Israel, which is right here. And I went to Spain, which is right over here. And I'll show you what I found. So in Japan, there's this jellyfish, and it's the heaviest one in the world. It's called Nemopolima nomorai, or Nomura's jellyfish. This jellyfish, here I am sitting by one. This is kind of a puny one. It can grow from that Ephyra, that snowflakey little baby jellyfish, to 500 pounds, to the size of a refrigerator in 1 year. And these jellyfish, here it is, and the fishermen who I went out with helped me find it. This is them pulling their nets up, and here it is kind of sitting in the net. And then this is when they pulled it onto the boat for me to look at. And this is another time where the fishermen were out, and there were so many of these Nomura's jellyfish that if they would have pulled this net up, it could have sunk their boat. So these jellyfish are really important. They used to only show up every 30 years or so, but now in Japan, they're seeing them almost every year. And they think it's because these jellyfish, they are doing better in our hotter oceans, and they also handle the pollution a little better. So I also went jellyfishing in Japan. In Asia, a lot of people do eat jellyfish. They're actually pretty good for you. They're all protein. There's a lot of omega-3 fatty acids. And so they're pretty healthy. And these are they fish them actually with just a net like this. So here it is, scooping this one out of the water. They eat this part, the oral arms of the jellyfish. And what they do is you have to get the water out really fast or they spoil. So they kind of put them in salt water like pickles. And then this is what the jellyfish salad looks like. This is the fisherman's wife served me some. And I can't really talk to you, but what it tasted like to me was green peppers. So really bland, a little crunchy, like it didn't taste fishy at all. It was pretty tasty. So, and then I wanted to also say we have jellyfishing in the United States. This is in Georgia. The kind of jellyfish they fish for here are called cannonball jellies, or in Texas we call them cabbage heads. And so this is them pulling in a big net full and putting them on the back of their boat, and then they preserve them. And then most of them get sent to Asia, to the Asian markets. The other thing jellyfish have caused, and this is a picture from Israel, is jellyfish can be invasive. And so these jellyfish are called the nomadic jellyfish, and they've invaded the Mediterranean Ocean. They didn't used to be there, but they've come from the Indian Ocean through the Suez Canal into the Mediterranean, and now they form these big blooms every year. And this is a power plant in Israel, and you can see the power plant. It cools a lot of its turbines with seawater, but right now you can see it's been flooded with jellyfish. So these jellyfish have become a big problem. They actually have a bad stinging cell, really bad stinger, so you can't go in the water. That's why I'm kind of touching it very carefully when these jellyfish are around. So we definitely are changing our oceans and creating places where jellyfish are more numerous. And then the last place I went was in Spain. And in this place, which is called Mar Menor, there are so many jellies now that they actually, these nets, they have to string along the coastline in order for people to be able to swim in the water. And it made me really, I have to say, pretty sad to be there and see that this is what we have to do now, because it almost felt like we've created an ocean. When we don't take care of our ocean, we create a place where we are no longer free. And the ocean really, to me, it does represent freedom. But the good news is that I also went to this meeting while I was in Spain. And at that meeting, there were so many people talking about jellyfish and coming up with trying to understand them, much more about them, trying to understand the role they play in our world, what they're trying to tell us about our oceans. And there was so much creativity and enthusiasm. And I feel like that's the message I want to leave with you guys, is that there is such a huge need for all of you to ask questions about the oceans, to get inspired by the oceans, to get inspired by the animals that you maybe haven't thought that much about, and try to push our understanding forward so that we can hopefully live on a planet where we can take better care of it. And I think I'll take some questions now.
Julie, well, first and foremost, thank you so much. What a wild ride, and so much we covered there.
Yeah.
On YouTube, and you want to share questions, we'd love to hear from you. Classes, feel free to chime in as many as you'd like. We'll take as many as we can over the next little bit. Miss Fisher's class, welcome in live with us on StreamYard. I'll be heading to you guys in just a minute. But I want to begin with the classic question. Were you stung? How much were you stung? You're going around, you're going to all these places, you're hanging out with jellyfish. What's the deal?
I have been stung by jellyfish. I haven't been stung very badly by jellyfish. So yeah, there is this thing called a box jelly. I showed you the one with the eyes that I kind of pointed out. So not all species, there's 50 species of them, but a few of the box jelly species are among the most toxic in the world. So that is something to keep in mind if you're ever in Australia or in the Philippines. Those you want to wear, cover your body when you're in the water. So like they're called stinger suits. It's like a rash guard, but you know, your whole body. And so I've never been stung by like one of those terrible jellyfish. I've been stung by the nomadic jellyfish I did get in the water with them. And I've been stung by moon jellies, which are kind of the most common jellyfish. And yeah, it hurts. I'm not going to lie. The best things to do for jellyfish stings are not pee on it. That is a rumor that we shouldn't do. Warm water. Well, you should scrape off any stingers that remain on your body with like a credit card or something that's not your own fingers if you can. And then warm water is really good, and vinegar is really good as well. So it hurts, but in most cases, it does pass. I mean, some people do have a reaction to it, and you should be very careful with that if you're one of those people.
That was a very thoughtful answer, Julie. Thank you for that. I wanted a quick note, but we're just getting underway with questions. You can see me, yes? Or you're seeing? Cool. Okay, I want to make sure you weren't just looking at your presentation.
Yeah.
We're going to head to Carsonville, Michigan, Miss Fisher's class. Thank you guys for coming in, and you're right at the camera, so go for it. Hi.
Hi, this is Waylon. He has a question about do they sleep, or where do they sleep?
Oh my gosh, I love that question so much. So They probably sleep. There were some graduate students in California at Caltech who were like wondering that very same question. And they put, if you've heard of melatonin, it's one of the things that our brain releases to make us sleep. And they put some melatonin in the water with jellyfish and they slept. So yeah, they definitely have the capacity to sleep. I don't know how much they sleep in the wild, but they have something that responds to the same kind of chemicals in our brain that make us sleep. So probably not there for no reason.
There you go.
Yeah.
We get a lot of questions about sleep and ocean creatures in general, and I like to highlight that some things just lie on the seafloor, some things turn off parts of their brain at one time and leave the other half on, which is something that some of you students might do in some of your classes as well. There's lots of options for sleeping in the sea, which are very cool. So thank you for that question, guys. Waylon. Geez, on YouTube, holy, Roz and Saunders, you have so many questions. I love it. Okay, we're going to do a few rapid fire ones, Julie, but we're going to cover as many as we possibly can. Jack wants to know, do jellyfish have brains?
Oh, it's such a hard question. The answer is, well, what's a brain? I think that's like the first thing you'd have to answer. So jellyfish don't have the kind of brain we have, which is all in one place and all cephalized, that we're called cephalized brain. They have what's called a nervous network that spreads out all over their body. And actually, like I've come to think of it as like kind of like an internet, like it's all over the place. There's no central location that controls everything. And they're really flexible about the way that they can use like different parts of their neural network for different things. And so I hate to say they don't have a brain like we have a brain, but they certainly are extremely responsive to their environment. They know how to navigate it. They know how to hunt. They know how to get away from predators. And they've known how to stay alive for over 500 million years. So, it's a tough question, but there's a lot coming out on just how responsive this neural network that the jellyfish have is to all kinds of situations.
They have a capacity to adapt to their environment through cognitive processes. So we can think of it that way. Like I'm trying to think, there's no way in which a tree does offhand. So jellies have that capacity, which is it's a great question. I knew we were going to get it, and it's very early on.
Yeah, and actually, box jellies, in fact, they can learn how to avoid obstacles in tanks. So they're probably the closest to what we think of as a brain. Yeah.
I've walked into glass doors, so I can't even do that all the time. We're going to take another one from YouTube, and then Ms. Fisher, we're coming back to you. Do jellyfish live in every ocean? Sydney, great question.
Yes, that one I can say yes to. Jellyfish live in every ocean. They live in all parts of the ocean, the top, the bottom, the less salty, the more salty. They can live in all kinds of environments. So, yeah.
Fantastic question. Let's head back to Carsonville. Come on up, guys, if you got a second one for us. And then other YouTubers, there's a whole bunch of you, so don't be shy. Feel free to chime in there. Ms. Fisher, hey. Welcome in. Yes, hi.
We've got Lily with a question.
Hi, Lily.
I know this question, but I want our people to know it. How do jellyfishes eat?
Yeah, they sting their prey with those stinging cells, and then the stinging cell it impales the prey. And then they pump toxins through the stinging cell actually releases like a dart with a hollow tube attached to it. And they pump toxins into whatever they've stung through that hollow tube. And that will kill their prey. And then they will move that using their cilia into their mouth. And then they'll digest it. Yeah. So their stinging cells are really sophisticated weaponry. They can use it both for hunting and for defense. And they're, like I said, it's the fastest motion in the animal kingdom. So it's really sophisticated. And it's probably part of the reason why jellyfish have able to survive basically unchanged for half a billion years.
It is crazy. Like, it's amazing to see quote unquote like trace fossils of jellyfish in some of the oldest fossil beds on Earth, and they're identical. Like they don't look any different. It's the same creature. Sharks are like that, where they look functionally the same for 400 plus million years. Like it's a wildly successful strategy. I've hosted 1,600 programs, and I've never had a kid have the framing of, I know this, but I want others to know it as well through your answer. So thank you for that, Lily. That was amazing. Going to take a couple from YouTube. Christian wants to know what's the most popular color of a jellyfish. Is there a standard one?
No color. One of the ways jellyfish disguise themselves is by being clear. And because they don't have, they don't have the kind of organs we have, which require colors, they're actually able to be pretty clear, most of them. The other colors they like to be are reds, because there's no red light in the deep sea, so red looks like black. And so it fades into the darkness of the deep ocean. And then the other thing, though, I didn't even talk about is a lot of jellyfish are bioluminescent, so they can create light. And that is probably like one way they try to like scare off their predators, or maybe lure in prey by bioluminescing.
Yeah. Great question, guys. And thank you for bringing up bioluminescence, which is clearly one of the most amazing things in the history of nature. Also, for many of our kids today, you'll be a little older when you understand why red light disappears as you go into the water, but it's one of the coolest facts in science. It's so neat. And I love that we brought that up. All right. Miller wants to know, how long do they live for? What's the jellyfish life expectancy?
So the jellyfish Medusa, remember the life cycle picture I showed you? Actually, it's sort of over my shoulder right here. Yeah. The same sort of thing. So the Medusa, that one, they only live usually around a year. But the polyp, the one that likes to live upside down, that kind of looks like a sea anemone, we don't know how long they can live. They could live forever. So every year or whenever they feel like it, I can't even say every year. Whenever they feel like it, they'll strobilate. But then the polyp doesn't die or anything. It just keeps on living. Like a tree will make apples every year, but the tree keeps on living. So the same thing with the polyp. And we don't know in the wild how long polyps can live.
Yeah.
Could be, decades.
It's a great part of your book as well. So I'm going to do a little plug on the bottom of the screen for our adult audience. Go to the library, pick this up, go get it from a bookstore. Miss Fisher's class, I'm heading back to you guys live. Come on in and take us away. Hey.
Brady.
Oh.
Brady's got a question.
Hey, Brady.
I wanted to ask something. Do they pee or poop?
Yeah, they do, because they have to get rid of their waste, and it all has to come out their mouth. So, yep, nice. They pee out their mouth, and they probably pee out their mouth some. They might release a little bit out of glands around their body.
You covered the question from YouTube as well, from Rockwell. So we've officially covered. Yes, all things produce waste, actually. Like no matter what thing you are, if you live on this planet, you produce waste in some fashion. All animals produce waste. They have to pee and poo. They have to get rid of the stuff that they take in that they just can't process. So that's a great question. Now you know. We're going to head for a few more questions. Time flies and you're having fun, Julie. So we're nearing the end of the broadcast. But let's see. If a shark ate a jellyfish, would it sting it? From Oliver.
I think it would. Whether or not the shark would care is another question. It turns out that there's lots of different kinds of jellyfish stinging cells. There's at least probably 30 or so. And some of them are stronger than other ones. And some of the jellyfish make toxins that are stronger than other ones. There's probably 2,000 species of jellyfish. So it depends what kind of jellyfish the shark ate. And so it would depend, but I could imagine it would feel it. One thing to know about jellyfish is that we used to think nothing ate jellyfish. And it turns out now that we can use DNA to identify jellyfish in different animals' stomachs. Almost everything eats jellyfish. So they're definitely more part of the food web than we used to think.
Sea turtles in particular, we do a lot of sea turtle conservation programs. Love jellyfish. They're like go out of their way. So clearly they're not being affected. Like it's not like you biting onto something that's sharp and painful and because they wouldn't have them as the main part of their diet. If every time you ate a chocolate chip cookie, it stung you, you would stop eating chocolate chip cookies, as sad as that would be. So there's pretty good evidence. Julie, we've got more questions than we can possibly take in a broadcast. So I want to note for our Ross and Saunders crew, if you want to email Julie after the fact, she's got contact info on her website. You can follow up with more questions. Keep the learning going. We'd love if you do that. It's always a lot of fun. But we're going to wrap up live with Miss Fisher's class in just a second. And again, I encourage everyone to check that out. Check out to our entire webpage and our If Then series coming up if you want to hear from more incredible, amazing women in STEM like Julie. Miss Fisher, come on in, guys. Hey.
I was wondering, how do jellyfish get their color?
Yes. When they do.
Yeah. Well, like I said, a lot of jellyfish are clear, but the ones that get their color, they just, I guess they make their pigments. It's a good question. Not entirely sure. They make pigments the same way we make, not the same way, but probably similar to how we make pigments. And they use that to color their outer
It is
skin.
a tricky question, by the way, Julie. Like, we don't get this question very often, but yes, ultimately everything makes their color from the things that they take in. So flamingos are bright pink, and they're pink because of what they eat. If you give a flamingo a totally different diet, they don't end up pink. It's really cool that is the case, and really sort of weird to think about. But yes, most are clear, as Julie mentioned, though, so they don't have a pigment, and that's part of what helps them survive in the ocean. So these have been some really thoughtful, fantastic questions today. I love this. And yeah, classes, thank you so much for your energy and enthusiasm. Julie, before we bring in Miss Fisher's class live to say thank you and farewell and encourage our YouTube classes to do the same, is there any final message about jellies you want to leave us with today before we wrap up?
Don't underestimate the jelly, and also keep learning about them. They're the most amazing animal. There's so many things we don't know about them, and I just they fascinate me every time I get to read another paper about them or talk to another scientist about them. So yeah, keep learning about jellies.
Fantastic. No better message than that. That's the essence of why we do what we do. So, Julie, thank you so much. We're going to bring in Miss Fisher's class to say a big thank you. And farewell, Ross and Saunders, everyone else on YouTube, thank you as well. Have a wonderful day, everybody.